Welcome everybody to the March advisory meeting for Broadband Consortium Pacific Coast. If we haven't met before, I'm Shelby Arthur and I coordinate the Tri-County effort, and I also work specifically with stakeholders in Santa Barbara County to support the deployment of broadband. If you go to the next slide, I think we love to do introductions in the chat. So if all of you who are on the call today could please just drop your name in the chat along with your role, what region you're serving, or what sector you're serving, or both. We'll run through the BCPC introductions really quickly. Nadine, do you want to introduce yourself? I'm not sure everyone's gotten a chance to see your face in a while and meet you.
Yes, usually I have a time conflict, but I will be joining these meetings regularly now. My name is Nadine. I've been working with BCPC on just revamping our communications for the past year and a little bit. And I'm really excited to be able to join these meetings now.
Yep, so all of the beautiful things that you see happening with the newsletter is all her good work. Vivian, you're next on my screen. Do you want to say hello? Introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Vivian Vasquez. I work with the EDC and BCPC as the Ventura County Broadband Strategy Lead.
You, Michael. Oh, go ahead.
Hey, everybody. Michael Foote. I work with REACH and BCPC in the San Luis Obispo County area.
Thank you. And Bill, our historian.
Bill Simmons, I'm working primarily in the Ventura County area, shooting the gaps wherever I can.
Thank you. And Tim?
Hi, everybody. My name is Tim Tierney, doing mapping and data management for the Broadband Consortium.
And Malika.
Hi, everybody. I'm Malika I am working with the Broadband Consortium on digital equity and also on the Ventura County Strategy Project. Nice to see you all.
Yeah, and thank you. If any of you are just joining us now, please put your name in the chat, what organization you're with, what your role is, what areas you serve, what part of the sector, just so we can get a sense of who's on the call today. And let's go to the next slide. We'll review our agenda. We have a couple of updates, not a lot from CPUC, but we do have, are hoping that everyone on the call is prepared to share any updates they have from their specific vantage point in our efforts to deploy broadband to the Tri-County region and support digital equity. So it will be a roundtable discussion. We encourage you to unmute and jump in and share what you're working on or any progress that you want to make sure everyone knows about. As a reminder, on this call, we have stakeholders from private industry, public agencies, and the nonprofit world. So it's a great place for you to share what you're working on for the benefit of all the folks in the room on the call that might be able to leverage what you're working on to promote all of our joint goals, or to maybe connect and see if we can help each other and support each other's initiatives. After our roundtable discussion, we have a panel of folks who have so kindly agreed to share with us the work that they've been doing to reach hard to reach populations, to help get connected. Different sectors. We've got someone from each county, we've got public agencies, and we've got nonprofit represented. So excited to share some of that information. And we would love your input, things that you are facing, challenges you're facing, or triumphs, anything that you want to share during that discussion. We have a BEAD update, which is kind of a non-update, but we'll share it anyways, and then a few updates on some digital equity initiatives. So in terms of updates from the CPUC, FFA applications are still being processed. We did see, I think we shared last month even, that CPUC is weighing the FFA applications and the CASIF infrastructure grant applications sort of to determine what best serves each project area. There was a lot of overlap between those two applications, and they have determined that the award announcements will be trickling out. There's not a unless someone else wants to jump in and share an update that I haven't heard, we don't have a specific time deadline for when those will be released. We did hear that the CASF infrastructure grant applications, because those have a deadline of when they're required to be announced, they said that the deadline would be June 2024 for those particular applications. Anything that's not any projects that aren't awarded under that grant are considered denied if they're not awarded by June 2024. Did anyone want to jump in and share something that I haven't heard about the FFA applications? Happy to have any insights.
Well, I will just say that we're starting to hear from the CPUC about the FFA applications. Many of our clients are starting to get questions. Technical questions are also coming. And also, I think you all are aware probably of the questionnaire that the CPUC issued a couple of weeks ago that was due, I think, about a week and a half ago, on the 11th of March. Hopefully you all submitted the answers to those questions in the questionnaire. It was mostly just re-clarifying what had already been submitted in your application, but it appears that it's being used as a template for ranking and scoring. So hopefully you all got that in.
Yes, and we did forward that over to all of the applicants that we were aware of in our region. So that's a great point there, Joy. And it's great to hear that they're engaging in a conversation. I think that's the whole perspective that CPUC is taking, is they're really reaching out to ask for clarification and make very nuanced decisions depending on project.
Yeah, there's also some very interesting joint build opportunities with the CDT that are taking place. Some of you may have been approached by the CDT. The CDT and the CPUC previously had not been talking with one another. So if you were doing a joint build project with the CDT, the CPUC wasn't really aware of it until recently. And apparently the state agencies are working more closely. And I think a lot of that has to do with we've seen them staff up considerably. So I think they've got the resources that are needed to do the due diligence on both sides.
Okay. Any other updates, FFA, passive infrastructure? In terms of the CASF infrastructure applications, I'll just share that the 2024 cycle will happen this year. We've been told anyways by CPUC. It will just be a little bit delayed. They'll announce at the close of this fiscal year. So after June, after they've made their awards, they'll announce the timeline for the CASF infrastructure grant applications. Those are primarily leveraged by private industry. And can cover fiber, wireline fiber, as well as fixed wireless access. So they're a little bit more, there's a bit more variety to what they'll cover than some of the other funding sources that are coming out this year. You can start to look at what projects might be useful. You can reach out to our team, BCPC, and we can go through some project areas with you that haven't been covered so far, or that are covered by an FFA application, but maybe also a passive infrastructure grant application. So feel free to reach out to us to set up a time to talk with one of the BCPC team members. We also have an ISP toolkit to help navigate that process, delineating, where you can get support from us, where you can dive into the data, and then also, of course, information about the broadband caseworkers who are there to help you as well. It doesn't appear that the California Interactive Broadband Map has been updated with new information after the 2023 application cycle. Tim, do you have any insight on that? This is the CASF infrastructure grant application. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Well, what I can tell you from looking at that map, responding to your own request for data updates was for that one particular layer, the the polygons corresponding to 25.3 service, that one got updated. Often this data that they get, it's released in a trailing manner, and they don't make that clear on the map. You have to look into the data and then drill through into the metadata links, and then read the supporting documentation to see if things have been updated or not. And so to make my point here, that one particular layer did get updated from 2021 to 2022, but here we are in 2024, right? So the data that's the latest update, but it's still a couple years trailing. Now, if there was let me get that map up here. If there was a different layer than that one you're interested in, probably while we're talking, I can get into the metadata and tell you if there has been an update on it.
I know there's a couple of other folks on the call that might also be familiar with the GIS data. Has anyone else seen any updates to that map that are more recent? That California Interactive Broadband Map for the CASF infrastructure grant applications. It indicates what is unserved, or I guess they call them priority eligible and eligible locations.
Yeah, okay. So Shelby, if you're referring to that layer, that was the one that I updated for you just the other day.
Yeah.
It's been updated in the map up to 2022, I believe it is, and that's probably what we got for the next year forward.
Well, we can cross our fingers that it will be updated a little bit, at least after these infrastructure grant applications are awarded. So in closing about the infrastructure grant, if there is any interest or you want to talk about project areas, please reach out to us. Another source of funding from CPUC is the Broadband Loan Loss Reserve Program. That application is available to public agencies to help support the financial aspects of deploying broadband and to back up any bonds that are issued to offer some favorable rates to public agencies. The application opened on March 12th. It is due on Tuesday, April 9th. So if you are part of a public organization that is seeking some type of support to back up the investments you're making, then that is a great opportunity for you. There will be more cycles this year for the Broadband Loan Loss Reserve Program. So if you can't make this cycle, it's not a lost cause.
Yeah,
You actually have opportunities later in the year to also join into that program. You can request a 30-minute consultation with the CPUC Communications Division if you are interested in that, exploring that and finding out if that's something that you want to bring to your electeds to determine if that's a good move for your area. It would need to align with your own public investments in infrastructure. And then finally, the broadband caseworkers, they are a valuable resource in addition to your consortia folks. If you need assistance with any CASF applications or BEAD applications, when the BEAD applications are released, they're also available to you. Any questions about CPUC updates? We can jump right into our roundtable discussion. We are interested in hearing from all of you. So we are interested in hearing any updates you have about projects you're working on, any challenges you face, anything that's, keeping you from being able to move your objectives along in terms of deploying broadband or in reaching your digital equity goals.
Maybe I can provide the Ventura County update if you'd like, if this is a good time for that.
That'd be perfect. Thank you.
Let me just say that we're going through in the next 3 months one-on-ones with each of the cities in our municipality working group. Then we're going to be having focus groups with each of the cities as well, and as well as the unincorporated areas. And then this is going to culminate in May with a regional event. And so as of today, we're really wrapping up the one-on-ones. And what the one-on-ones do is they give us the current state. That this is where things are at today. And it basically is a summary, a situation of where things are today. The focus groups take us to the next level of moving forward, going forward, vision and priorities. And then the regional event's going to wrap it all up into a regional picture. And so that's kind of the method behind all of this. It gives me great, it's quite a privilege. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Malika. She's been here with us all along, but she and I are now very much tag teaming this effort. And eventually she'll be picking up everything that we're pulling together and moving it forward as the Ventura County coordinator. So I'm looking forward to being exclusively a historian as it relates to the consortium. It's a place that I aspire to and want to be, and Malika will be the Ventura County coordinator. And so everything I'm saying, she has to check on and be aware of and be part of. So the other thing that's going to be very interesting as this conversation unfolds is the whole discussion about community networks and the JPA as it evolves. I was in a call earlier with Jory Wolf talking about it as it relates to FFA and the application that's coming in. That whole thing is ramping up and going to be an important talking point over the next month or two. And as we try to put it together and what the region needs and make sure that it represents what we need to do today, but it's also positioned to where things are going to be going tomorrow. And so it's really an interesting time. And we're looking forward to all the inputs from the municipalities as well as the other stakeholders in the area as we want to stay informed and represent all of our interests. Malika, is there anything any point that I should be making that I didn't, I overlooked?
No, I would only add, as we're starting to engage more with stakeholders in the municipalities and unincorporated areas in Ventura County, if folks on the call are aware of organizations or, civic leaders or stakeholders within those communities that feel would be particularly enthusiastic and representative of the communities and the broadband needs within those communities, please feel free to connect them with us so that we can make sure that they're engaged in the conversation as well. So that's just a call for share your contacts with us so we can bring them into the conversation as well.
Yeah. Since we're on the topic of Ventura County, any other shout outs that we want to get from anyone on the call? Anyone who's doing projects or working in Ventura County that wants to share?
Yeah, sure, Shelby. I think it'll be important for us to give an update on Ventura County and the work being done there. I don't see Terry on the call here today. There is a lot going on, and I don't want to bore you with all of the details. It's legal, it's quite a bit of work with the state. There's joint build opportunities going on, but many agreements also going back and forth between ISPs and the county and the BCPC and others. We won't get into too much of the detail about that, but I would like to invite Will Morat, who's on this call, who's the project manager for the work being done there. Will, if you'd like to just, in a nutshell, provide some updates on where we're at and a timeline on when things look to be closing.
Yeah, the county has in its FFA application and has been working with the state. Right now, we're looking at having all the agreements necessary for the public-private partnership, the joint build, a public-public partnership with BCTC, the Transportation Commission, to be able, we're anticipating having all those completed and in front of the various boards and commissions in June, so that it's set up so that as soon as there's an FFA announcement, everything can proceed forward. We're working through the design engineering right now. We're just about at 60% low level. Fielding is on site is anticipated to begin starting Monday. And the goal is construction, and this is all a knock on wood, FFA comes through, that construction will start before the end of the calendar year and will be completed before the end of calendar year 2025, both to meet the county's needs, ARPA's needs, but also the state's needs to expend middle mile funding and construct that before the end of the year, next year. So I think concurrent with that, you know, the county's partner, Astound, is also engaged in negotiations with the city of Ventura. And they're really looking at a regional approach here that if it's not going to get hit with this first phase in 2024, 2025, that they're definitely looking at expanding out over the next 3 or 4 years into some of these other communities, Oxnard, can't say it. I'm not even going to try.
Wainimi.
Wainimi, sorry, and Camarillo, Simi Valley. They're looking at much more than just this first phase. This is just the foot in the door for Astound to be able to compete and provide high-speed broadband across the entire county and region.
Thank you. Anyone else in Ventura County? We can move along. So I can.
Please note that there are some things that are taking place in the south of Ventura County as well. And that is the Ventura County network will be extending all the way, actually even into Los Angeles County, and the build will connect to the city of Santa Clarita. So even though they're not a county city, they will be hopefully part of the JPA that we'll be working with Bill on. And then, of course, there are things taking place in the south as well, in the areas of Westlake Village and others. There is a very large COG network, Council of Governments for Las Virgenes, being the Westlake, Glory Hills, Calabasas, and Hidden Hills and Malibu. Of course, many of those are in LA County as well, but it's bridging the 2 counties, and we hope to be able to pull in the build that is taking place there through Measure M funding, and potentially connecting it to the greater Ventura County network as phases 2, 3, 4 are constructed over the course of the next 5 years.
It's great that interconnection between the counties is just a great move for building that resiliency. All right, I'll just share. I don't see our Santa Barbara County folks. I see Carrie, maybe you have something that you'd like to share about North County. Really quickly, I can share that the County of Santa Barbara is, eagerly awaiting information about the FFA applications and is monitoring the BEAD application, particularly the challenge process to determine what locations will be eligible for BEAD funding. Another thing that I will share that the County of Santa Barbara is doing that, may be of interest to some of the rest of the public agencies on this call is looking at actually recently just built language into their environmental justice element of their county general plan to incorporate some digital equity objectives and to support infrastructure deployment in order to bind that together with environmental justice initiatives across the county. I share that because it's a great example of ways that you can take action beyond building infrastructure, beyond being the deployer in the region, and actually look at how can you or the departments that you're working with start to support the long range vision of incorporating broadband investments and innovative technologies into the long-term planning for our communities. So I wanted to share that out a little bit. I also got an email from a community member in Los Alamos, and I don't know if some of you have heard us talking about Los Alamos a lot over the last couple of years. It has been a location that has largely been left off of fiber lines. And I received an email just yesterday saying we finally got some fiber in our town, and they're very excited. We held some listening sessions there in 2022, Bill, I think it was 2022, and heard from folks that some of them couldn't even dial 911. Like they didn't even have access for cell service all through Los Alamos. And so it's really exciting to see something coming to fruition there in this town along the 101 that is booming and starting to grow economically as well. I wanted to pass it over to Carrie if you have some any updates from the North County.
Sure, I can. Can I share one slide?
Sure. I think
Right.
it's possible for you to just steal the screen. Maybe not.
Okay, give me a second. Can you see that one?
Mm-mm.
Okay, let's see what I did wrong here. Try it again here. Okay. See if this works. Is that okay?
Mhm.
Okay, well, Sam from the Shumash, Vicky from the Econ Alliance, and I had a Zoom call with Wilford Marshall, who's the EDA's rep for Southern California. We briefed him on the Northern Santa Barbara County broadband study, discussed some ideas to target additional EDA support for our analysis and estimated costs for the 6 extended middle mile routes that we studied and recommended. The route that would provide the most economic activity and job growth, which is what the EDA wants, would probably be the route from Lompoc to Vandenberg Village to the base. Let me make this bigger, to the base. And the reason for that is the base is desperately trying to get some broadband to the north part of the base. They're going to come in from Surf, which is the railroad track, and come in that way into Lompoc. But if we can move a smaller amount of middle mile up to the base, they will be able to track more space companies, commercial space companies, and of course, all the logistics support companies that come in to support that. They often have their companies in Lompoc or right out of the base. And so we'll be doing some economic development research and get back to Mr. Marshall in the late April or early May timeframe. So that's our update from Northern Santa Barbara County.
Great. Thank you.
Carrie, I have a question.
Sure.
Have you been reaching out to the folks over at Onward because they have a substantial build in that area?
We have not, but thank you, Jory, for that.
If you'd like, I could make an introduction.
That would be
because
wonderful.
it would be logical for you to seek them out as a
Sure.
potential partner. They already have a backbone in that area.
Right, of course.
Okay, I'll reach out to you later.
Thank you,
today.
Jory. Appreciate it.
Action. Anyone else from Santa Barbara? We are, I'm going to give a shout out for the digital upskilling program. City of Goleta is hosting several cohorts of digital upskilling classes at their community center in Goleta. The curriculum is targeted to new to tech learners. So like the very basics of, how do you charge your laptop, turn it on? How do you access email, create an email account? Working through the initial steps to get folks connected and ready to start utilizing digital connections to improve their opportunities in terms of workforce engagement, social engagement, telehealth access. The first cohort already started. I'm not sure if Julio has hand in that and wants to provide a little update on the first cohort, but I know that we'll be recruiting folks from over the summer. So there's, I think, 4 or 5 more cohorts that will be held in the city of Goleta. And Weave also is simultaneously holding the Get Your Small Business Online course for Santa Barbara County residents. They currently are teaching the English language version, and then they will launch the Spanish language version in connection with the same digital upskilling program later on in the spring or early summer.
Shelby, do you happen to know how many people are attending those classes?
Yes, I think that and Malika has the actual numbers, but I believe the Get Your Small Business Online course has 21
enrollees. And the first round of the New to Tech course has 10, which is not a huge number, but it's a great start to the pilot program. And the courses have a capacity of about 15 to 18. So it's just about right to start.
Yeah, oh, very cool. 10 is a great number.
Yeah, and Brian, just so you know too, that curricula is available via the EDC's digital upskilling initiative at no cost to partners. So it's curricula, it's training, and it's, you know, if you find Moorpark has a need for it anywhere or a partner who wants to take that on, we can definitely get you connected with EDC, and it's like a plug and play beautiful curricula.
Thank you.
Shout out to Vivian, who was integral to developing that and launching it in Ventura County. Okay, so let's move up to San Luis Obispo County. Any updates that you want to share out from San Luis Obispo? I know we've got a great participation today from SLO.
Hey, Shelby, I don't have any updates other than what we're working on with BCPC, but I can open it up for, see, we have Lorelei, Annie, or Bill. Feel free to jump in and update as needed.
Michael, it might be I think this, I don't know if Bill was on our call last month. But it might be nice to introduce Bill, if you could introduce yourself.
For those that didn't, I was on the call last month, but for those that didn't see me, I'm Bill Lucia from the County Administrative Office. And I made a few comments. I probably don't need to reiterate them, but just to let folks know that we know we have a lot ahead of us to go from the strategic plan that's just really a point in time and not a specific action plan to working on a more of an action plan on next steps, and waiting for the FFA as everyone else is, but also looking to flush out a plan for partnerships and taking advantage of possibly the county's dark fiber. Last week, the board approved some amendments to the ARPA plan for broadband. We had an issue in Arroyo Grande where the city didn't want to do a flyover and instead having to dig to get to the DSS building, and we made some allocation changes. So if you heard that there might have been a broadband action recently relating to ARPA and broadband money in the county, it was just adjusting on the margin. It wasn't a significant change, but we are in the process of putting together an update and framing an approach for a multi-pronged strategy, whether it's the engineering and technical side to the equity side, and also figuring out how we can collaborate better with the local agencies. And I appreciate the folks that were on the call last month and reached out, and we've been getting connected.
I can do a quick update from City of San Luis Obispo too. So we currently have an RFP out. I think it closes at the end of next week for design engineering services that will is design and engineering for our entire broadband plan that we had previously put together and gotten accepted by council. So that's using our ARPA money to get those design and engineering plans done, and we're excited about that. That should give us a lot more leverage with future grant applications to say we've got shovel-ready projects ready to go. So we're also waiting on our FFA application to see if that comes through. And if it does, this design engineering work will feed into that, and the RFP has it prioritizing those areas that were already proposed for the FFA grant. So excited to see what kind of responses we get to that, and excited to get that work moving. And then we're also working on finishing up our negotiations for our public-private partnership also, and we'll probably take that to our council hopefully at the end of May or potentially early June, kind of similar to what other counties are doing. So
congratulations getting the RFP out there. All right. Anyone else from San Luis Obispo County? Lorelai, you can hold yours if you want, just for the next segment.
That makes sense. Yeah, you bet.
Congratulations, Josh.
thanks, we're excited.
Fantastic. All right, last call. Move into the next segment of our meeting here. I am really grateful to the folks on the call today that agreed to share out a little bit about what they're doing to connect their communities, how they're leveraging funding opportunities, and the work that they're doing to reach folks that may not be easy to get to. And also in communities that maybe aren't as profitable as some other areas of our region. So I am grateful to Lorelai Capel from City of Atascadero. Brian Chong is on the call from City of Moore Park to share, and Davis Foley from People Self-Help Housing. Fred Luna from SBCAG will join us. He just is running a little late because this overlaps with the SBCAG meeting. So when he joins, we'll welcome him into the conversation. And I have slated some time for you all to introduce yourselves, and then we have a few questions to run through that anyone on that panel are welcome to join in. And if you have questions along the way, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll see how we can work those into this discussion. If we can take the slides down so we can see each other's faces, we'll invite let's go Lorelai first. Do you want to take a minute to introduce yourself and just share a little bit about what City of Atascadero has been doing to work on deploying broadband, and sort of how you have been able to work on those projects? Just a couple minute introduction.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and nice to see all of you. So many partners in the room. So I am Lorelai Capel, as she mentioned. I work for the City of Atascadero. I've been their Deputy Director of Economic Development the last 3 years now. Time has flown. Our role here is really implementing everything our council, City Council wants us to do, and they have a very strong focus on growing quality of jobs in Atascadero. So about a year and a half ago, we started a partnership with the City of Paso Robles, trying to just get things started. We were trying to get everybody in the county on board, but it's really hard to get all the cars moving in the right direction at the same time. So we were able to just spearhead a process for a North County broadband strategic plan, which was extremely successful. I feel like we completed the project in less than 6 months and were adopted by April of 2023. Part of that process was everything from creating and in addition to the strategic plan, we have new policies for Dig Once. We have waived all fees for new broadband installment. We have a master encroachment permit process. So if an ISP came to us and said, we want to do your whole city, we would say, great, give it to all of us. We'll do it all at once and as quickly as we can. Make it as easy as possible. We've also were able to submit a challenge to the state fiber mapping data, saying, I know you think that we're served, but we're really not, and here's why and where. That was really helpful. And more importantly, I think that was the most valuable piece of the process, was an RFI, request for information, from local and outside internet service providers, which connected us to people who were interested in putting in fiber that hadn't been here before. And that's really important because the redundancy and the competition helps so much with the price and the reliability and getting access to all of our people. So in addition to that, we created a digital equity plan, working on that. I can tell you more later. We have since deployed 10G fiber, closed fiber loop in our downtown, and are working on deploying it to the majority of our city, including 12 anchor institutions. that are publicly owned. And then in spring and summer, they'll leverage the work that they've done on getting our private fiber loop done to wrap the entire city and all of the neighborhoods. So you will see in Atascadero, if you're a resident, in April or May, notifications and door hangers saying, Astound Broadband is now in your neighborhood. So you have other options, and it's much cheaper and it's higher speeds. So that too. And then finally, for tracking, we can talk about that. We got a broadband kind of tracking tool. How are we really doing? What are the speeds truly? And so it's kind of information that'll come from, you know, all the speed tests. It will aggregate it all. So that's kind of our mechanism to see how we're really doing, making sure everyone's really connected. And then we were just found out yesterday, we were awarded honors from California Local Economic Development organization from the state for regional collaboration. So all good things coming our way, and really excited. And it had been a long time coming, but it happened so fast. And so we're really grateful. I've been working with Bill for probably 7 years now. And I think more happened in the last 6 to 9 months than it had since I met him. So all sorts of good stuff.
Thank you, Lorelai. Brian, would you introduce yourself, share out any progress you've made, and any efforts towards increasing your digital equity goals?
Yeah, so first off, congratulations, Lorelai. That's a terrific honor. That's super cool.
Thank you so much.
So on the Moore side, we're a little ahead of the curve. We actually completed our broadband strategic plan in 2020, right as the pandemic was beginning. Our plan was really focused more on infrastructure than literacy and adoption. It focused on a city network, mapped that out. It sparked the idea, which we're still working on our Meet Me Room and data center project for a city-owned project that I've talked about over the months here. And we have really incorporated broadband into our development review processes, into our capital projects since then. So I can point to hundreds of feet that are built as a result of those, city capital projects where we're just laying conduit for the future. I've got miles and miles of requirements on developers to put in part of this network. And in fact, this morning, we had kind of an unexpected development proposal along our route and said, hey, rather than us doing this and installing it when we widen this road, you're putting in the road widening in front of your frontage, and guess what? You're putting in conduit for the city as well. So we are very much on the bureaucratic side, getting our network built. We also have, likened ourselves to being a smart city testing ground. We have vendors who come in and say, hey, I want to borrow your streetlight. Hey, I want to stick this on the roof of City Hall. And we'll let people do that and, test out their technologies. We also completed I forget the exact fancy acronym we named it, but a technology scouting smart city report that said, here are things that specific to your operation would be beneficial. Some of those are very small, obvious things that we just never got around to until then, like online scheduling software. So people can just sign up for things, and then just a lot more easy and automated than, dealing with us on phones or just with manual forms. One of the things that we could certainly do better is in the digital literacy space. We have a lot of efforts at meeting or trying to find hard to reach people in our community, but there's not necessarily an overlap of hard to reach with broadband and the hard to reach, people. You could just live in an area that's not served by broadband, even though you're fully literate, and it's a different thing there. So we are open to trying things. I don't have a nonprofit or any group that's actively advocating the broadband space besides the city, but we are certainly, it is a priority of our council to do that. So that's where we're at.
Thank you, Brian, for sharing. Davis, are you there? You are.
Hi.
Want to introduce
Yes,
yourself?
I'd be okay. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm Davis Foley, and I'm the Director of Technology for People's Self-Help Housing. We're a 501c3 nonprofit, affordable housing developer, and our mission is to build affordable homes with site-based services that offer opportunities to change lives and strengthen communities on the Central Coast. In that vein, we've actually installed resident internet for all of our tenants at 51 of our 55 properties, and the last 4 are in progress. And all future properties will be built with this by default. Most of that was done with state funding, but not all of it. We can get into that a little bit later.
Great, thank you. And we will get into that in just a couple minutes. And then Fred just joined the call. Perfect timing, Fred. If you're ready, would you introduce yourself and just tell us about the Santa Barbara County SBCAG's work and projects that you're working on?
Yes, can you hear me all right, Shelby?
I can hear you, thanks.
Okay. Yes, so I'm Fred Luna. I work for the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments, and our role related to broadband projects currently goes back to the approval of the countywide broadband strategic plan with many of our partners, and now we're working to implement last mile projects and continuing to advocate for broadband connectivity and other roles as we're kind of in a parallel process to cementing our role as the Joint Powers Authority for Santa Barbara County as a broadband forum for regional discussions to make improvements from planning, funding, and implementing, and working with our local agency partners and all other interested parties and stakeholders in broadband. I think that's a general kind of update right now, Shelby. If you wanted me to get into some details, I certainly could, but not sure where you were at the agenda, and sorry for being late.
No problem. I think that's a great introduction, and we will delve in deeper in this conversation. I put together a few questions, but I'm going to remind everyone on the call, if you're interested, if you have a specific question for anybody, please feel free to put it in the chat or to raise your hand. We have a couple just questions for any of the panelists who are interested, who have a response for us. The first is, and I think this is one that's great to lead with, how did your projects gain support or visibility with your organizational leadership? So that has been a challenge that we've heard about from some public agencies and nonprofits that, there's not the buy-in that they need. So I'm curious from all of your perspectives, what did it take for your projects or your initiatives to really get that leadership support to enable your progress? Anyone can take the mic.
I'll start because ours is funny, but ours started with our mayors who are patiently impatient, but our mayors are good friends in Paso Robles and Atascadero, and they do the mayor's wine and wine once maybe every other week, where they have lunch or dinner and they drink wine and they whine about what's going on. And they were very frustrated with the fact that we don't have more, and that they thought that North County, meaning Atascadero and Paso Robles, have a really great opportunity for economic development, but we can't do much if we don't get fiber in the ground and support the businesses that are coming, or the people that are telecommuting already from our communities, which we have a lot of. So they were pretty gung-ho on this. They rallied staff and put it in our strategic actions from each council and said, you guys talk. So it really led us to putting our economic development staff together, myself and Paul Sloan from Paso Robles, and co-managing this effort. They also were so impatient that and forward thinking that they thought, we've got this opportunity with SB 1090, which is the Diablo Economic Development Mitigation Funds from the closure that was announced years ago. They put that money away and said, we're going to save this and we're going to earmark it for broadband. So that was a really important catalyst for this. Not only were they aligned, the whole councils were both on board, and they basically tasked us with just going as fast as we could. And they supported us in anything we did, including writing a LADA grant and all those things. So it was awesome. We didn't have any stumbling blocks. We just did regionally. We wanted to all get on the same boat together. But again, putting that many 7 jurisdictions in an unincorporated area together was just a lot. So instead we said, well, why don't we just get going, and everyone else we'll just kind of jump in with and share information as we go, and maybe we'll learn something and some lessons learned that we can share, or maybe we'll dovetail into their efforts when they get there. So it worked out.
Yeah. On the Moore Park side, it's a similar origin story, but maybe with less alcohol. Still a lot of wine.
We're
But,
wine country. What do you expect?
That's right. Our mayor is a beer brewer, so maybe
Okay.
work with that. But for us, it's really political will and political leadership. So when I joined Moore Park in 2016, broadband was not on anyone's docket. Subsequently, there was a council member who was elected who ran on a broadband platform, and it was his kind of talking point was broadband solves everything. But his big focus was on the economic development side. And he managed to convince all 4 of his fellow council members that this is a priority and we should do this. And he convinced them to invest, in the low 6 figures of planning, dedicating staff time. And, from a standpoint of a city staff, we tell incoming council members, we can do anything, but we can't do everything. And so when the council said this is a priority, that is when we began our efforts. And that has, survived that council member who's no longer on our council, but it continues to be a priority from our electeds.
We'll call it brew and boohoo.
Yeah, there you go.
There
I
we
was gonna
go.
say,
Boo-hoo and brew, I like it.
yeah, the hot tip to walk away with is maybe you need to send a little drink along with your suggestions
Yeah,
words
I like
the
it.
folks that you're trying to convince. Great. Davis and Fred, I can open up that question to you, but I'm going to add a second one in case you'd rather respond to this one. I'm curious also about what resources that you leveraged to support your projects. I know Davis and Fred both can speak a little bit to some of the state resources and others that have come up. So Davis, please take it away.
Thank you. So essentially the context was, we were hearing that this was an issue from our residents, and we offer things like after school programs, so that, at our family properties, the kids can get, extra educational help after they've come home from school. And, our educators were hearing things like, we our kids can't do their homework at home because we don't have internet. And so like the learning center at our site was the only place they could do it. But at the same time, not all of our sites even have a physical space for a learning center, so we don't have them everywhere. And so we started to realize like, hey, this is a problem. And then around that time, we'd been starting to talk about it. And then some state funding came along, which was Assembly Bill 1299 or AB 1299. That's really what helped us get into this and allowed us to retrofit so many of our properties with resident internet. And so they can connect at no cost to them, and the property pays, all operating expenditures, everything like that. And we've got different setups. Some of them are wired, some of them are Wi-Fi, but yeah, the end result is everybody in those at those properties, they're all able to connect. They can choose, to have their own service through Spectrum or Comcast if they would want to, but many choose not to, or or maybe they can't quite afford that even with some of the rebates. So we have helped ensure that they're online, and it was so successful, and we heard so many stories from our residents that it's really changed their lives. And this was even before COVID. So once COVID hit, obviously the need became even greater. And by that point, we had already decided if the state funding goes away, which it did for a time, we're still going to do this anyway, and we will self-fund it anytime we do like a rehab of a property or a new build. It's going to be part of our standard construction design. So we, made that decision internally based on everything that we'd heard. And then, a couple years later, SB 156 comes along, there's more funding. And that's been wonderful, but we're gonna keep plugging along, kind of regardless what the state does. But it has been really helpful. We wouldn't have been able to retrofit all of these properties without that state funding. So that's been crucial for us.
Thank you. That's great. And that SB 156 public housing grant, we have a little bit of an update on that will follow. It's being expanded, so there will be a few additional types of properties that can leverage that same fund. And Fred?
Yeah, happy to mention that. I mean, I wasn't around when or actively involved in the broadband discussions when it first originated and found a home at SBK, but I think that a lot of the credit probably goes to our executive director, who's kind of built this environment with our board of directors, which is the county board of supervisors and representations from all the cities, that they see SBK as a regional forum for all kinds of discussions. They thought that could be an appropriate place for broadband, and as it was burgeoning as many of you have already talked about, the last several years. And so even this morning, I just came from our board meeting. Director Hartman, who was one of our champions, and she's the board of supervisors representative, she just continues to see that as like developing a plan. And so we started originally with that plan, and every city contributed federal funding. I think it was ARPA funding at the time, and so we got going, and so we're continuing that momentum.
Yeah, and that was just a great example of that whole regional collaboration of realizing that this was a key interconnection for each of the cities in the county, and that they would kick in a little bit, kick in what they could, and then come out with at least a piece of a whole plan. And then leveraging the LATA funding, I think, was another great opportunity that SBCAG took advantage of with the county of Santa Barbara, as well as so did Paso and Atascadero. And I know a few others on this call are part of some LATA funding projects. So you all sort of already answered this, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway, in case you have anything you want to add. I've observed that, all of these speakers have economic development objectives that they're reaching through the increased investment in broadband, investing in access to education, particularly for folks who don't have the funds to pay for that access themselves to achieve those digital connections. But how have these projects served your communities, particularly target populations? And when I say target populations, I'm thinking of the populations that are listed in the statewide digital equity plan. So we've got rural communities, we've got folks who are living below the federal poverty line. We have folks who are English language learners, economically disadvantaged communities, our seniors, and formerly incarcerated individuals. There's, I think, 8 to 10 groups that they've listed in the statewide digital equity plan. Do you see these projects as serving to uplift those populations, and in what ways?
I'll add to that. So much like Brian mentioned, there's 2 groups of people kind of. We've got people that are close to fiber with no means to afford it or access it. And then we have people in in Atascadero, or a lot of oak-studded hills. So we've got topographically challenged people who are hard to reach in areas that are very rural, large lot residential, kind of up on our West Hills, but they're also people who've been telecommuting for decades. So they're doing work out of Sacramento or out of San Francisco for Apple and LinkedIn. And we've even got, let's see, corporate attorneys for Netflix. We've got Uber, HR. I mean, we have some really interesting people doing cool work here. but they can't get the fiber that's stable and underground and of high enough speeds to do what they do. So some of the things that we were able to do is when we partnered with a local ISP, they started submitting the FFA grant applications, which was really cool for us because we were already just trying to move like 6 or 7 projects forward, and they were able to help us kind of scale. Like, we got this, will you write us a letter of support? That was huge. So it let me throttle back on a lot of that stuff and focus on other things. And they were able to use whatever funding they can get to go towards the underserved people, like our elementary school kids who don't have a Wi-Fi hotspot or can't connect to fiber because of financial purposes or don't have a laptop. I mean, most of our kids have Chromebooks now in our schools, but it allowed them to bring resources to that. We also had a really big push in our area, thanks much to Maria Kelly for getting our ACP program kind of rolled out in northern San Luis Obispo County, all the way up to San Miguel. And we're going to continue those relationships and networks to make sure we're still in our community connecting everyone who wants to be and who we can get connected. So again, saving the money that we can use for our more affluent areas that just don't have fiber by using grant money to assist in the unconnected and underserved people. So.
Strategy. Anyone else?
Yeah, and actually for us, we, as you mentioned, Shelby, we are focused primarily on economic development tools, but our approach for residents that are disadvantaged, we had about just over 10 percentage points of our residences were enrolled in the ACP program. And really what we found, and when I just look at social media posts and questions that we get here at City Hall, it's really the number one issue for us is cost, not so much literacy, but cost. And that's why, when we look at our infrastructure, efforts here and trying to attract new ISPs to enter the Moore Park market, that's the way that we feel we can, use capitalism to lower that cost and eliminate that barrier to entry.
I'll give Davis or Brad an opportunity to join that. And then also at the same time, open it up to anyone on the call who has a question they wanted to ask the panelists before we wrap up. You can put it in the chat or you can raise your hand. All right. Well, I had one last question. If you wanted to kind of wrap it into any sort of closing comments that you had before we move into our next topic for this meeting. How are you? Oh, Tim had a question. Did you want to go next before I wrap up?
Yeah, thank you, Shelby. This is directed to Lorelei. I'd be interested. You made mention of deploying a broadband tool. Okay, and that you just texted back to me. Yeah, I wanted to see that tool. Thank you. I'll be checking that out.
Yeah, I sent it to everyone too, just so they can see. So Teleworks put this together for us towards the end of our project, just to make sure we had the ability to monitor. Oh, we've got a sign in. Let me see how that works. So I think it's password protected to the city. So I don't even know what ours is right now, but I will find it and let's stay in touch and I can help you log on and check out what we got going on.
Thank
Maybe
you.
at a future meeting you can tour it for us. So we all have that. And that is the last question is, how are you measuring outcomes? How are you tracking progress? And then also, if you have any final comments that you wanted to share before we move up. Brian, go ahead.
Sure. So we have kind of two things that we look at. One is kind of, I'll call it the soft data, and the other is the hard data. The soft data is really just what we're hearing from people. It's just a high volume of anecdotes. So we do hear from businesses saying, hey, I've got a problem. How can I do this? Or, this ISP is not meeting my needs. Who else can I talk to? So the fewer and fewer of those we get, that's a good sign. Ditto for homeowners as well. But the hard data that we get, so we poll our entire community every 2 years with a statistically valid survey. Spend tens of thousands of dollars on this. And we ask a whole bunch of things. And one of the things that we track is how would you rate your community in a bunch of areas? And one of them we specifically ask about is broadband internet, just like we talked about crime and homelessness and everything else. So the last two that we've had when we ask the broadband question, the percentage of people who give a good or excellent rating. In 2020, that was 65%, which is quite low, actually. In 2022, it fell 13 percentage points to 52%. And that 13 point, I should point out, we do this in November of each of those years. So the world had already ended in 2020. Everyone was already feeling crappy. So it wasn't COVID. And when we look at that and try to attribute what that was, it really was price increasing from our incumbent provider. I mean, they're not on the call, but even if they were, it's Charter. And when you raise prices, that makes people less happy with it, even if the service is just as good or even better as it was before. So our hope is that, again, if we got the second ISP entering the market with superior service, superior speeds, and lower costs, that 52 would be more reflective of other infrastructure questions that we ask, which are typically in the 80s and 90s here in Moore Park. So that's the hard data of we have work to do in this space.
Davis or Fred, did you want to wrap up any closing comments? And if you are measuring any outcomes, what are you using to kind of track progress in your goals?
Sure, I can add a little bit. So most of our properties were funded through some state grant or other, but the CPUC, California Public Utilities Commission, I'm sure everyone on the call knows what that is. They require quarterly reporting for all of those sites that were grant funded. And so we see every 3 months just how much how much usage there's been, and it's quite a bit. It's heartening to see that it is being used, and that's one outcome we track. And then we've also done some like digital literacy programs. So at two of our senior sites, we did a pilot program where everybody went through a training, and then they got to keep the device at the end. And so kind of the thinking is like, okay, we want to make sure that yes, they have a network, but also they have a device and they can connect, and they know how to use it. So that's the next thing we're looking at, and still trying to figure that out. But I think that's an opportunity for us. And resident internet, it's such a critical piece of daily life, and we've been providing it. We will keep providing it, and we can just as far as data goes, we can just see it is heavily utilized, and so that reaffirms our commitment. Every 3 months we see that.
That's great. And Fred?
And then I did share the broadband monitoring tool and the password. If you go to the right-hand margin, there's a pull-out button where you can check like your service availability from the FCC data, or you can check it through different ways. So you can kind of see how we're improving. And then the only other way we've been measuring success is through miles of fiber installed. And I think we're up to 12 miles right now of new fiber with our 10G closed fiber loop. And then I think we'll be offering upwards of 2G to the neighborhoods. So it's kind of what we've got as of right now. And then of course, the number of people connected through our ACP program. So those are some metrics that we can use, but we haven't really thought really hard about that yet. We're just trying to get it in the ground.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, Shelby, I was going to say something very similar, is that kind of feeling our way through what are the appropriate measurements. There was a lot of good information gathered during our planning process. But yeah, we kind of immediately got immersed into implementation mode. And so I think some of the things we would be looking at is just creating that inventory of those a number of unserved areas and just kind of ticking them off as we go. And like others have said, how many people are we then now serving, and kind of moving forward. And then specifically, you know, we do have reporting requirements, as others have mentioned, for our grant program. So that's also another way we're checking our progress over that 2-year grant program we have under Lattice. So, but yeah, I think it's something that's still evolving for us.
Well, that's great to hear. And I've noticed through our work supporting some LATA grants and some other state funded or CPUC reporting projects, they are starting to really ask you to start tying your activities to economic impact, jobs created, social and civic opportunities, increased social and civic opportunities. They're using those exact words. So I think that, you know, maybe this warrants another conversation in the future in this forum around how folks are already measuring that type of information or impact of other initiatives, and how that can transfer or translate into, you know, what the impact of broadband is in those same spaces. So as we're evolving this conversation over the next year, we'll try to tie things in some more from other sources of information. Thank you all for being pinned on the Zoom screen to lead this conversation. I really appreciate your participation. And we hope to continue seeing all of you pop up in our conversations month to month. I will ask Nadine to put the slides back up. We have a couple more topics to get through. We'll go to the next one. Oh, there it is. Sorry, this is it. So a quick BEAD update for everybody. We're going to switch gears back to funding updates. There's not really an update on if the initial proposal has been approved from the state of California. Everyone's waiting for that. The challenge process can't commence without that approval. The application can't open without that approval. We did see the NTIA did release the Build America, Buy America waiver for the BEAD program. The BEAD program had some pretty strong requirements for using domestic products in BEAD funded projects. And they do have a waiver now that's been approved. It's gone through, I don't know, a 6 to 9 month process of challenges and oversight through the legislation. There is a waiver program for certain elements of fiber installations. So if you, that information, the link will come out in our newsletter for April. So we can either send it to you now, or if Malika, if you have a chance to pop it in the chat, or if you can wait until April, you'll see it in our newsletter as well. One message that we are hearing from NTIA is that they are really encouraging local governments, nonprofits, and internet providers to review the BEAD location data when it's released and to engage in the challenge process. So the challenge process is designed to verify what locations are served or unserved. You might have heard Lorelei say that they engaged in that process when it came to FFA funding. This challenge process seems to me to be pretty intense, but possibly worth it. One thing you can do right now in order to get ahead of the game is to request your Tier E license from the FCC so that you can gain access to the location data. The location data will be released officially when the BEAD initial initial proposal from state of California has been approved. So if you have your Tier E license already, then you are ready to go reviewing that and determining if your agency or organization can participate in the challenge process. Another reminder, or I guess it might be new information for some of you, BEAD is not covered under our consortium grant officially. We are able to share information and we are tracking it, and we really want to make sure all of our stakeholders are informed about BEAD. But if you're planning to submit an application and need help with the application, you'll need to reach out to the broadband caseworkers at CPUC for direct assistance. Brian?
Yeah, I had a question about agencies engaging in the challenge process. I did not get involved in that, but was your involvement defending challenges to your projects and applications, or was it, no, you're saying this area is served, but it really is not?
It's location challenges. So like the data fabric that is released says these are the locations that are eligible for funding. So this BEAD process will be actually challenging those locations, whether it says it's served and that it's served by fiber, or whether it says it's unserved. You can submit a challenge to say, yes, it is served, or no, it's not.
Okay, so I'm just thinking from a rational standpoint here, because when we've looked at our data, in all cases are discrepancies where you are saying it's unserved, but then I drive over to that apartment complex and say, oh no, we have plenty of service, but I'd rather be eligible for funding and not challenge that. That seems to be the rational thing then, right?
From a public agency perspective, yes.
Okay.
I would suggest that the provider is probably going to challenge that and say, we already serve this, you shouldn't give it funding to compete with us. So
I will
that's why
leave that to them.
Yeah, exactly. I think that you have to look at what your priorities are, and as an agency or an organization, and determine what's the best move. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. Okay, let's go to the next one. A little bit of a digital equity update. I'm going to hand this over to Malika for the most part.
Sure.
And if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to drop them in the chat or raise your hand. Malika?
Yeah, so I was able to attend the CETF Digital Equity Legislative Forum update a couple of weeks ago, and they had a panel of multiple agencies provide updates for the past year's successes and initiatives. But to underscore a few of them, one was an update from Broadband for All, and of the 24 action items for that department, the CDT has considered about 18 of them, done, with ongoing efforts continuing, and then 6 long-term efforts that are more under the CPUC's purview. But they wanted to highlight that they have provided updates to the state of California's local jurisdiction playbook. It's the permitting playbook, and we can add a link to that after this update. In addition, they underscored the creation of multi-layered digital inclusion networks representing over 10,000 different contributors around the state, and ACP enrollment of over 2.9 million California residents, which represents about 50% of eligible households in our state, which is a very high percentage relative to other states. Now, obviously, the state of ACP is still, we still don't know what's going to happen, but that is an underscore there. And so CSAC, in addition to many of the legislators of the state, have gone to the Capitol to emphasize support for continuing ACP funding, at least through the end of the year, the calendar year. And so we'll see what that looks like. There has not been any movement on that bipartisan appropriations bill for that funding. As far as the CPUC update during the forum, the biggest one that perhaps wasn't, that is still fairly new, is the day after the forum, they held a voting meeting, and there was a decision made to expand the broadband public housing account and tribal, let's see, and that how it is expanded is to increase eligibility for the program to non-publicly supported housing developments, and also the project cost to facilitate deployment of broadband networks within those developments. In addition, they've had some modifications to the Tribal Technical Assistance Program that aligns more so with the local agency technical assistance program rules and guidelines. Now, how that all lays out, I am not entirely sure, but the decision will be reviewed at an upcoming CASIF annual workshop that is on April 29th that I believe will include information on in the upcoming BCPC newsletter too. And you can reach out to us if you want to make sure you have information on that as well. As far as an update on the middle mile network, I know that Shelby went through some of those as well, but the major update is the updates on the interactive map on the website, which includes new updates. It includes an interactive network version that will allow for downloads of information and 2 new pages of a miles by partner log and a map update log. That's not necessarily related to digital equity, but that was an update provided during that as well. Shelby already gave us an update on the digital upskilling programs. So those are going on in the city of Goleta. You know, the EDC continues to support communities and agencies that would like to engage and use that curricula in their communities. As far as the statewide digital equity plan, a second or updated version was submitted for review, and that was after public comment. It was modified in response to the open comment period, and it really just pertains to definitions of infrastructure projects and mapping, covered populations, and the status of ACP if it is not refunded. So if you have a chance and you want to look at the updated version of the SDEP, it is online, but it is currently in the curing process with NTIA, with that planning period to end supposedly at the end of this month, March 29th. And as of this point, there has been no statutory allocation to execute on those digital equity plans. But once they are done, we're being told that the funding is going to happen in capacity grants first and then competitive grants, and the capacity grants will be allocated in tranches versus all at once. So we'll keep you updated as we hear more about that. And then as far as yeah, please.
Really quickly, that I put the link to the statewide digital equity plan in there. It's over 200 pages long, I think. So while I don't suppose anyone has the time to sit down and read it word for word, there are some really key segments of it that you might want to look at if you are interested in taking part in any of the statewide projects that will be funded. There are some grant opportunities that they've proposed to do things like expand and grow the funding for programs targeting libraries, for example, or the ATT Access to Technology grant through the Office of Department of Aging in the state of California. But there's also funding planned, again, we don't know exactly how this will work out, to support organizations or programs that already have some sort of digital navigator or digital equity, digital literacy program in place. So it's really to support and grow what's existing rather than necessarily reinvent something from the beginning. So it would be worth your time to look through the table of contents and see if there's any specific pieces that you're really interested in reviewing.
Or feed it into your chat GPT
there you go.
friend and see if it can spit out some information that's relevant to you. Anyway, so, and Shelby, I don't know if you want to give a little bit more color on the CETF best practices checklist for municipalities. We included that in here, but I don't think we have any updates quite yet. I don't know if you want to share.
I will just give a little bit. Anyone who's part of a public agency probably has received this checklist from us before. CETF, in partnership with Valley Vision and some other organizations, put together this local government checklist. I am going to pop it on the screen just so you can kind of see the letterhead. It might make you feel like you recognize it. And this is a checklist that is designed to help local government agencies to review their policies, their initiatives, their planning department, their role as consumers in the internet service space, and their role as providers, to determine like to what degree are they really engaged in practices and policies that will move the needle on achieving digital equity in their communities. We have been promoting this for probably the last 2 years, and now CETF is re-engaging with local jurisdictions, asking you to fill this out to say, yes, we do this, we have this, or no, we do not, with no judgment, obviously. This is a growing document, it's for growth orientation. CETF doesn't have, they have a proposal out to their board that may actually align some funding opportunities for local governments who are willing to engage in this checklist and promote it or throughout their departments, complete it throughout their departments, and work towards improving it, the practices in their local jurisdictions. So we will be reaching out to you as we have updates on that. We don't have anything approved or specific, but we are happy to share out and contact you all directly when we have more information about that. In the meantime, I'll put the link in the chat if you want to get started looking at that best practices checklist. And I think that's it for our meeting today. We want to move to that last slide. I think it has our contact information. We thank everybody for coming today. If there's any final comments, we'll stick around for a couple more minutes here. But we really appreciate all the interaction, and our guest speakers, thank you again for sharing with us all of your insights. I will be taking a couple months off, so you will see the other BCPC friendly faces, but I am going to go on family leave for a little bit, and we'll hopefully rejoin you all in the summertime. So thank you for being here, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. See you.